we acknowledge that it is very hard. It's hard for a reason, but we can lift you up and empower you throughout that hard to make it a little bit more of a positive experience. When you enter the professional field, it can feel like you're on an island and it's really scary. The learning never stops when you're in medicine. I never started out intending to be a nurse at all. My plan was to be a ballerina. I knew that I couldn't do anything one student at a time, but that there were bigger ways to address the system as a whole.
Hey there, it's Cindy Thomas, your career coach and strategist. The Insiders Career Club was recently rated in the top 20 job search podcasts by FeedSpot. Check out their website link. It'll be in the podcast notes. Now, let's meet our special guest. Our special guest today is Morgan Taylor. Now, she's the Chief Nursing Officer at Archer Review, and she's a board-certified pediatric nurse practitioner. At Archer, she leads with empathy, innovation, and a deep commitment to community. Morgan's work has directly impacted over 500,000 nursing students and nurse practitioner students, making her a powerful voice in the future of healthcare education. Let's welcome her into the show. Morgan, welcome into the Insiders Career Club podcast. How are you today?
Hi, I am wonderful. So happy to be here. Thank you, Cindy.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this conversation because we have, not that I'm a nurse, but I hired nurses in my background for 4 years. So we have a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, I think so.
So why don't you start off by telling us what you're doing now? And then I'll ask you a whole bunch of questions about it.
That's perfect. We'll have to work backwards because I'll tell you what I'm doing now is not exactly what I planned to be doing when I, mapped out my career in high school or what have you. So today I sit as the chief nurse at a healthcare education company by the name of Archer Review. We are here to support all healthcare learners from the day they decide, hey, I'm going to go to nursing school, or yes, I want to be a doctor, throughout their professional journeys. So that means we're going to help you get into school, make sure that you stay in school and that you actually thrive in some very challenging years, as well as, of course, achieve licensure and continue through your practice. The learning never stops when you're in medicine, be it medical, nursing, allied health. All of us know you keep learning continuously throughout your career. So we're there to uplift, empower, and make that journey a little less painful.
Okay. All right. Okay. So tell us about, actually, I want to back up. Because you said doctors and nurses. I thought it was only for nurses, but you also help prepare doctors. Tell me what you do with them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a similar concept where we seek to really engage with healthcare learners, be it a doctor or a nurse, from the day they decide, hey, this is what I want to do. So how can we help you get into med school, support you during med school? So all of that curriculum, doctors are studying, I believe it's an average of 12 to 16 hours per day, if you can believe it. And there are smarter and more efficient ways that we can help guide you through that curriculum, support both your preclinical and clinical rotations so that you really get the most out of it. And that, again, you feel empowered. A long, long history in healthcare education of it being kind of a brutal experience. Only the strong survive. You have to tough this out. This is going to be the worst years of your life. And we at Archer just don't believe that it has to be that way. We acknowledge that it is very hard. It's hard for a reason. But we can lift you up and empower you throughout that hard to make it a little bit more of a positive experience. So we really try to get in the weeds with you, be your cheerleader, throughout medical school, into residency, all those difficult things that doctors have to do.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to the nurses. Now that I've had that information shared, what core competencies should a training curriculum have for nurses entering the workforce?
All right. So there's a lot there. It's hard to be a nurse, and there's a lot of core competencies out there. But I'm going to focus on two that I'm hearing a lot about right now from people who are hiring nurses and working with new nurses.
Good one.
And I think they're oftentimes maybe not entirely missed, but not emphasized in a training program. And they are teamwork and communication. When you enter the professional field, you get your first job as a new graduate nurse. It's very exciting, but it's also very overwhelming. And it can feel like you're on an island, you're out here taking care of patients for the first time, and it's really scary. The fact of the matter is, we have wonderful interdisciplinary teams with therapists and doctors and social workers and case managers, and communicating with that team and learning how to work with them is going to make or break your experience. The fact is, you can't do it alone. And I don't think we're well enough prepared for how we talk with and work with those teams, because it's kind of complicated. It's not always an easy thing to do.
Absolutely. Okay. And then what tools do you have to assess specific knowledge gaps or skills that new nurses typically have when they join? So there may be a disconnect. I know that when I was a recruiter and I worked with our director of nursing, we ended up, and I think I mentioned this to you when we spoke earlier, that we ended up having I don't know, you can call it a meeting, a summit, whatever, with all the schools that fed into the hospital hiring system. And so the Don would speak to them about, and there were other heads of different departments there as well, to share what they were seeing in the new nurses when they arrived. Now, this is after they had done all their preceptorships and entry training to get into the hospital. But then the hospital also had training that they did for new nurses, depending on which specialty they wanted to work in. So, but there were still pieces that were missing because things change, right? So how do you assess or keep track of the knowledge gaps and skills? Just like you mentioned, communication and teamwork. Yeah. How do you do that? I mean, what's your process for doing that?
Yeah, great question. And you're highlighting something that is so important. As we try to grow the number of healthcare professionals, specifically nurses, that we have working at the bedside, how do we do so effectively? Because we know our faculty are retiring. We know we don't have tons and tons of people ready to step in and educate this next generation of nurses. So that raises some concerns. So a big part of what I do at Archer is collect data on, now we've had over 1 million learners. What are they excelling at? Where are there some of those gaps? How do we collate that information in a way that's actually useful for educators to try and close those gaps to the best of our ability? So I'll give you the breakdown. Stop me if I'm going off on a tangent, because I love this stuff, right? This is so fun. This is the data in me. So we start students with a baseline assessment. They come into our program, they're ready to go day one. Let's just see where they're at. That's not anything revolutionary. As they go through the program, we're going to continue trending at 3 different levels: a subject, a lesson, and a topic level. I believe that we need more specific data to actually move the needle on how our students are performing. If you just tell me a big overarching broad subject that, hey, they're not doing so well on, it gives me less actionable insight into really moving the needle forward to getting them where they need to be. So we get very granular. We look at that over time. And then they take their exit exam, where we see how they are scoring. We compare to their class specifically, as well as a global average to the over 1 million learners that have taken these assessments and seen those results, so that we can give that information to educators in a way that's actually useful and that they can better prepare those nurses as they enter practice.
What are some of the key elements that your training program covers to ensure comprehensive preparation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are a couple of things that make the Archer platform more comprehensive than some other programs you may see out there. Everyone's going to hit on your basic body systems and, care and comfort and procedures and things like that.
Okay.
We try to take it to the next level and really make sure those critical thinking aspects, specifically prioritizing and delegating, are very thoroughly both covered and practiced. It's one thing if the student just hears, oh, you prioritize this over that. It's a different if they get thrown into the case as the nurse and they have to act as if they're the nurse and make those decisions. They get some practice, right? They get a chance to mess up where it's risk-free so that they can learn from it and really put those skills into practice once they are on the floor. So prioritizing, who do I see first? Who needs to be closest to the nurse's station? Who's most at risk? Those sorts of in the moment decisions, as well as what is their scope of practice, whether they're an RN or an LPN, and who and what can they delegate to. And remember, this varies a little bit by state, depending on their scope of practice and Board of Nursing regulations. So really getting nitty gritty with where do you go get those resources?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you ask? Why is this so important? Really drilling that in so that they will practice to their full scope of practice. But again, utilizing that team. It comes back to that teamwork too.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, 2 questions actually. Is your program online or are your trainees basically there? Do you have a facility there that they come to, or are they doing this online, or is there the combination of both?
Great question. And we are an online company. We got started 2019, quickly went into the pandemic era there where we could not, do training sessions in person. It was always something I planned on doing. And then something really interesting happened. Everyone got on Zoom. We started getting really innovative with how we delivered training materials online. And I will put a stake in the ground to this day and say that for this generation of learners, doing our trainings in real time, but virtually, is more effective. There's one major reason why I will scream this from the rooftops, and that is that students ask me more questions. It is risk-free for them because they don't have to raise their hand and say that they didn't understand, what I was just saying about heart failure and kind of out themselves in front of their friends for asking that question. Some students are okay with that, but not all of them. And when we put ourselves in an environment where they can just chat me and say, hey, Morgan, so sorry, but can you go back to that? I really didn't get it. I get more in the moment feedback so that I can iterate and learn with them than I ever did in an in-person setting. It also is more accessible. We keep a lower price point. It's for students who maybe they're working parents, they have a job, they have kids. It's more flexible. So it opens the doors to more diverse learners that maybe wouldn't be able to come into the classroom.
Okay. And how long is the training program that they do? So do you do it sounds like you do multiple programs at different levels. So 4 years?
Yeah, great question.
Nurse?
It hugely varies. So it depends on exactly the degree that you're going to pursue. We have in nursing, let's stay specific to nursing here. We have associate degree, bachelor's degree. We also have master's and doctoral degrees in our advanced practice roles for our nurse practitioners.
Okay.
So programs range from 2 to 4 years, some with prerequisites, some without. And we are never, ever meant to replace those degree programs. We go with you on that journey. We're your coach. We're your cheerleader throughout that journey. And we really want to be there from day one. So, let's say you're doing a bachelor's of science in nursing. That's a 4-year degree. And we are going to support you with every class you take, every clinical rotation you go to, all the way up until you're getting your licensure.
Okay, great. How do you ensure a smooth transition from training to independent practice?
Ooh, isn't that the $1 million question? That transition to practice is hard, isn't it?
It is. It can be very hard.
I totally struggled with it as a new nurse. The learning curve is very steep going from that first practicing job that you have. There's so many, I'll call them, soft skills that you didn't necessarily get a lot of practice doing in nursing school. I remember for me, one that was really hard was how do I talk to families? I had never been able to really practice that as a student. And I went into pediatrics for my first nursing job. So communicating with mom, dad, grandparents, primary caregivers was a struggle. I will scream from the rooftops that I think the most important part of that transition being successful is a mentor. I do not think that we were meant to do this alone. It is a hard job, and you're not supposed to know everything, especially not at first. So you've got to know who you've got for your support, who's in your back pocket that you can just pick their brain. Hey, what could I have done better in that scenario? Or, oh my gosh, I just have absolutely no idea how to approach this. Your mentor, at least in nursing training, oftentimes people think, oh, well, the person precepting me, kind of giving me my on the job training, that's just who my mentor is going to be. And, we don't get to pick who that person is. We sometimes do or sometimes don't really click with them. So I always tell my students, your preceptor can turn into your mentor, but if that doesn't feel like the right fit, it is on you to go out there and find someone who can be your village, build your support, because you've got to have people to lean on. I find the nurses that really don't have that mentor are the ones who struggle the most with that transition to practice.
Okay. Yeah, the preceptorship, I think people do think that, but they may be precepting a couple of people at the same time.
Oh, yeah, they most likely are.
And the nurse's time they're still doing their nursing job, right? So they don't have a whole lot of time.
Absolutely. And remember, they're the one who are evaluating, are you going to come off orientation? They're reporting up to the manager. So I always really emphasize it's kind of nice to have someone outside of your organization where you can be very candid and open with without any fear of repercussion. You really want somebody who's going to build you up no matter what. I know that can be hard to find. I'm not saying that's, a super easy task, because you got to put yourself out there sometimes. You got to go really seek that out, but it is worth it. It is really worth going and finding that person who's going to have your back.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what do you find when you're speaking to the students that you have interaction with after they've gone through their training? What are some of the challenges that they face? Just period, when they get to the hospital, that you find to be universal?
Yeah. Right now, the universal challenge that I'm hearing is around the shortage in our nursing workforce, and therefore the dearth of resources available for that transition to practice period. We're having very high patient to nurse ratios, very high acuity. We have what's called the care acuity gap right now, where baseline knowledge of our new graduate nurses is here, and the acuity of our patients is up here. So there's this widening gap. Patients in the hospital today versus 50 years ago are much, much sicker. So there's this need to get up to speed very quickly without a lot of resources to do so. We just are needing to take more and more patients, and it's burning people out quite quickly, because a lot is expected of you without necessarily a lot in return.
That's too bad. That's really too bad. I know the organization that I worked for did a really good job with training. I don't know what's going on with them now, because it's been years since I left. But at the time, their entry-level training programs, they were different. They typically were about 3 months, unless you were doing a training for OR, which was 6 months. And I'm surprised I still remember this. This has been like 20 years ago. So,
oh, wow. Impressive.
Yeah. So, but you do it for 4 years, day in, day out, for 9-10 hours a day. You kind of remember stuff. Anyway, so they did a really good and thorough training program, but I don't know that other hospitals do the same thing. I know some here do, because California is much more stringent. Nurses have to go through a little bit more than they do in other parts of the country. So what is it, where are you located, what state, and how do you help with some of the prep for licensure? Because if they don't get that nursing license, They aren't going
Yeah.
to be able to
They
practice.
can't practice. And that's one more nurse that's not available to fill a spot in that much needed
Mhm.
nursing workforce. So first of all, very important point, I think, on, again, the differences state to state. That's why I always refer students to their state board of nursing, because yes, there are similarities, but there are also nuances that are very important to be aware of. California is a great example. So I'm located in North Carolina. And we have a huge variety of, right where I am, we've got like 3 large academic medical centers with very robust training programs. They
That's
have
nice.
university funding, and they have really good, we call them a nurse residency program.
Hmm.
Now, you go a little bit east or a little bit west from me, either towards the beach or towards the mountains, it gets more and more rural. And our community facilities, our community access points have very little in the way of funding to support those nurse residency programs, those new graduates. They absolutely need them, but it can be very hard to find a program in those areas. So I think not only is it state dependent, but urban versus rural, and are you affiliated with an academic institution has some play there.
How are you, or how does your program, because it's not just you, how does your program evaluate performance of nurses throughout the training program?
Yeah, great question. So we try to be very much in line with our licensing board. That's the standard that nurses are going to need to hit to actually obtain their licensure. So we take our cues from them. We attend all of their continuing education and really learn from and with them to try and be in lockstep. So they set what they call the passing threshold, and then we kind of model after that. So what we're doing, and this is a fun question because students often ask me, Morgan, what percentage of questions do I need to be getting right to go and achieve licensure? Like, what's the magic number, right? And the fact is that there is not a magic number. It is all based off of that passing threshold our licensing body sets. And then that calibrates based on the difficulty level of the items that are in use and what their peers are doing. So at Archer, we have something called your peer average. If we look at all, 1 million students who have taken this specific question, what's the percentage of them that got that correct? And are you above or below that on average? So we look for students to be about a standard deviation above the peer average over time. I think one really important takeaway for me is it's not all about the numbers, but it's about how consistently you can meet that performance. I don't want to see you just take one assessment and be like, oh, I scored above average. I'm ready to go. Let's do this. Sign me up tomorrow. It is more about, can you demonstrate that result time and time again? So I want to see it happen 4 times in a row where they're scoring that standard deviation above their peer average. And that tells me, okay, they're consistent. They have mastered this material. I can sign off on them going to sit for licensure.
Now, do you have continuing education programs that you present as well, in addition to the original prep? But after someone is working, do you help them with continuing CEUs, as it's called?
As it's called, yes. Oh, what a great thing to dive into. My goodness. Before I was ever in higher ed and I was working bedside, CEUs were like the bane of my existence, right? You're like, oh, I've got to do this number of hours to renew my license. What can I do that's like the cheapest and the quickest? And, I think a lot of people, myself included, I'll totally call myself out, will try to just figure out what they can do for the least amount of time so they can check the box. Part of my mission at Archer is addressing the retention rate of nurses at the bedside. We are losing nurses faster than they are coming out of school. About 67% say that they're out of here in 2 years. And that's oftentimes less time than they spent becoming a nurse. How insane. We have got to do something about that. So when we look at the evidence, why are nurses leaving? What are the factors? Of course, very multifactorial. But one thing that jumps out to me is that nurses are not engaged with the profession. The nurses who are leaving do not feel empowered, like they are advancing to the next level and really, have their hands around what professional development looks like. So for me, I want to support you through your whole journey. You decide you want to be a nurse, I've got your back forever from that point, because there's never an end. We were always learning. And that means continuing education that is empowering, impactful. It's easy. It doesn't take your whole day and it doesn't bog you down, but it actually helps move the needle as far as where is your career going? Where is it today? Where do you want to be? And how am I going to help get you there? Because if I can really support and lift you up, you are more likely to stay in the profession. So we currently offer continuing education. We are accredited through the American Nurses Credentialing Center, which is the gold standard in nursing continuing professional development. And we offer, I want to say like 5 different sessions a week where we're always jumping on live to go over different topics like communication, teamwork, all sorts of different offerings throughout the nursing lifespan. And we will soon have an on-demand continuing education marketplace as well. So yes to the continuing education. I'll be innovating and tweaking it for years to come. I'm really excited. I'm really passionate about making it something that is actually really useful.
Okay. So what are some of the changes that outside of the pandemic and nurses being overloaded, because they were always overloaded. They were overloaded 20 years ago. And when I started recruiting for nurses, the HMOs were coming on board. And it caused a huge shift, and a lot of people got laid off and a lot of people didn't come back, right? So there's always changes, and there will probably be some more changes coming down the pike soon, coming down the pike soon. So what are some of the changes that you've seen in nursing that have happened over the years that you've been a nurse?
Great question. Lots of changes in nursing education and what our students are expecting of us. And I think this is absolutely a great thing. When I went to nursing school, it was expected to be in person. You were expected to sit there through a 3-hour lecture, get all the information you needed, and come back and get, at least a 90% on your exam. It wasn't very personalized. It was, large classrooms, large lecture halls. We know, looking at the evidence, that is not necessarily the best way to learn and engage with learners. And this new generation is leading the way in showing us that that's not how we're going to learn. They are looking for short format videos. They want, 5 to 7 minute micro lessons that are really going to help with spaced repetition and reducing, cognitive overload. They want resources that they can take on the go. They want podcasts. Here's a great example. They want to be able to take that learning with them, and they want things that they can put into practice. They are go-getters. They are ready to innovate. They are ready to think differently, and they are going to demand that we rise to the occasion and innovate with them, which I think is very exciting.
Okay, well, we got AI to help, so.
Oh my gosh. Oh, well, then that's the other thing you bring up too. AI, of course, huge. And I'm by no means an expert in that realm, but it's driving this desire and this need for personalized learning. We are not a one size fit all. Everybody has unique needs and challenges. So how do we leverage these new technologies to provide personalized learning pathways that, again, can meet each unique student where they are? And I don't have all the answers about it, but
no one does.
Oh man, there's going to be some big changes for sure.
We're all learning, right? We're all learning.
Yeah.
I use it frequently throughout my day. So it does help. It's a good, if you're stumped, it's a good jump starter to help you, with your ideas and whatever. So it's going to be a part of our lives for a long time going forward. And, I purport that everyone get on board with it.
Yep. I'd have to agree. I'll say we've had lots of conversations at Archer, and they've evolved over the years as to, At first, I'll be the first to raise my hand and say, I didn't really understand this. This makes me a little bit nervous. This seems like a shortcut. And the more we dive into it and learn it together, I think that's step one. You can't be afraid of it, but you have to know what you're getting into. We don't want to go into this blindly. So educating students about those tools, what's going to be available to you when you're out there on the floor, what resources and technologies are, coming down the pike so that they're trained on them. They're not fearful of them, but also they know how to use them effectively. All of these tools are only as effective as their user. So how we prepare students to use them is very important.
Yeah. Part of my understanding of AI is that it pulls from everything that's on the internet, right? And there's a lot of things on the internet that are not correct. So I wonder from a medical perspective of how that can be vetted. And so that you're getting information that is not only timely because you get it quick, but accurate. And I'm wondering if someone in the future will develop an AI medical database that gets checked and vetted, because that would be a great help, I think.
Absolutely. And it's so important that we talk about those things with our students and that they don't just take those outputs as fact, because they are not always. I do think there's general awareness of that. But again, it's how are we educating these students on using these tools and still being that human set of eyes or that clinician set of eyes with a critical thinking lens.
Well, critical thinking is a base point for nursing.
Absolutely.
Actually, for everything these days.
Yes.
Can you share any success stories or examples of past programs that you've implemented and how it's translated to someone that's gone into the workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you two stories. First, at a health systems level, we worked with a wonderful partner in Texas that was hiring graduate nurses. So they've finished their Bachelor's of Science of Nursing program, but they've yet to pass that board exam. So they're starting off in the workforce as a care assistant and studying for that exam, going to pass it. Well, they had pass rates in the mid 70s. So, let's call it 75%. So a quarter of their nurses that they had hired were then unable to accept that job. So huge amounts of turnover and lots of dollars lost due to that licensure failure. So we partnered with them to implement, a more structured program to support and empower those students throughout their 6 week of studying was what we implemented. And we were able to bring those licensure pass rates up to 99%. And that was just in 6 weeks. It wasn't anything revolutionary. It was just us getting in the weeds with the students, supporting and giving them that structure. So it reduced that turnover and saved their HR department a pretty penny because they actually were able to fill those roles.
Yeah. And to keep those people that they trained and get them in and on the floor.
Important.
Yeah.
So important. Now, at an individual level, I'll say my favorite success stories are from nurses that have tried to achieve licensure quite a few times and not been successful, either due to personal barriers. Sometimes they'll have English as a second language, which presents another barrier. Very important to talk about the challenges that population faces. And at Archer, when we have students who aren't successful, we double down on them, invest in them, and guide them as much as possible throughout that next attempt. So we don't say, good luck, go try something different. No, we're very confident that what we have is going to help you see success, but let's do it together. And I'll tell you, the students who say, oh my gosh, I went to take this for my 10th, 11th time, and this is the first time someone believed in me. I could hear your voice in my head as I was taking this test, and I knew I could do it because you were there with me. Those stories really warm my heart because it's someone who is so ready to make a difference, and they've finally been given the tools and the empowerment to get across the finish line and be able to help.
Okay, great. So when you're speaking of second language, English as a second language nurses that are, trying to come into the field of nursing, are you still seeing high high numbers from the Philippines and India. And then where else do you see them from?
Yes, you are spot on. The Philippines and India, as well as Nepal, has been an area we've had quite a few, and some different regions in Africa as well.
Okay. Yeah, it's true. We did have African nurses. Okay. Tell us a little about you, Morgan. What made you decide to become a nurse, and why do you stay in the nursing arena?
All right. So never started out intending to be a nurse at all, let alone a nurse educator. This was so not the plan. My plan was to be a ballerina. And not in the way of, oh, I'm 5 years old and I want to wear a tutu. I was very seriously trained in classical ballet and working towards the goal of dancing for the New York Ballet. And oh my gosh, it was a long time ago now. I won't say how long, but I had a significant back injury,
Oh, no.
stress fracture in a lower vertebrae that changed what my trajectory looked like. That was no longer going to be an option. And I had never thought about what else was out there. I was so single-mindedly focused on this one goal that now wasn't a possibility. I had family members that had been sick before, had some exposure to the medical industry, and said, okay, well, I think I can be a nurse. That seems like an option that could work for me. So I dove straight into it. Absolutely loved it. Really found that I had a heart for pediatrics. I'll say to this day, I love kids a lot more than I love adults, for the most part. Kids are my favorite people out there. So I chose to go into pediatric nursing and grew up as a nurse in the float pool at Duke University Health System. So I got to float around to anywhere in the health system that had a pediatric patient, whether it was the ICU or the cardiac department or the emergency department, and really learn the best of all these different worlds of pediatric medicine. So it was a beautiful journey. I eventually left to do some travel nursing and see some different facilities and areas of the country. But all in all, bringing us back together, I saw time and time again how new nurses were treated, how they were supported, and how they weren't prepared for what they were walking into. And I saw them walking out the door faster than they were walking in. And that is what drove my pivot to education. I knew that I couldn't do anything one student at a time, but that there were bigger ways to go further upstream and address the system as a whole. So that was what drove me to my start with Archer.
Yeah, that's great. What do you see for the future of nursing? Do you have a vision there that you think is going to, come up on the horizon that maybe other people don't see?
Well, I can't say for sure if other people see it or not. I know there are some who do, but I see the role and the scope of the nursing profession evolving and shifting to meet these healthcare needs. We know that there are going to be more and more patients. And as much as we try to fill our pipeline of nurses, it's going to outpace the number of nurses that we have. So how do we integrate direct patient care roles like CNAs and PCTs? What does their scope of practice look like to support the entire interdisciplinary team? My vision for the nursing workforce is one that is very collaborative. Our mid-level providers like our PAs and our NPs, our physician counterparts, our counterparts in allied health are all going to need to collaborate to meet the challenges of the years ahead of us. So what are the specifics? I couldn't tell you exactly, and I think it will vary tremendously, but I do see the future of nursing as one that is increasingly collaborative and constantly innovating in what and how our scope of practice is utilized.
As you're saying that, the vision that came to my mind is that nurses' roles may be expanding. And because there's also a shortage of doctors here in this country.
Absolutely.
So, while not every nurse may be an NP, or a PA, but just the overall general scope of what a nurse may do on the daily may expand, as well as these PAs and patient assistants and all the other people that are in the hospital that are support systems to the nurse and the doctors, but mostly nursing, they may expand as well. So their
Right.
training may increase, and it may not be so, I shouldn't say what it is now, but it may just increase.
It absolutely is going to evolve. And let's take a second to think about how is technology going to play a role in that. So one example, as a bedside nurse, how much time do I spend gathering my medications for my morning med pass? I go to the fridge, I go to the tube station, I go to the Omnicell, I'm here, I'm there. It might take me half an hour, depending on how many patients I have, how many meds they have, to actually go and put all those meds together. Does that need to be an RN who is doing that? No. Can we use technology to help us gather supplies, to restock, to do things that are not necessary to be within the scope of practice of a nurse? Of course, a nurse can do them, but can we leverage technology to really shift the nursing role to maximizing the scope of practice so that we are engaging in those tasks that are critical, using our critical thinking, spending time with our patients, that's what we're best at, versus gathering supplies, picking up our patients' DoorDash from the front of the hospital. How can we leverage technology to think about those roles and maybe make them more effective, dare I say?
Yeah. Like maybe, I don't know how meds are dispensed, if they can. I'm sure they can be dispensed by some type of machinery that's driven by AI that thinks, where the orders are put in by the doctor and the nurse pulls it out and she can check it, rather than going and getting the medication from wherever it is stored, unlocking the cabinet, doing all of that.
It's 5 different places.
It's amazing to think of what will happen. And we are just in for a ride from that perspective. Because everything, as I look at just overall in general, what's happening right now because of AI, the landscape of work and what employers want and the skills that people have shifted. Like you're saying, the communication and the teamwork, those are two big things. Collaboration, the soft skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
The analytical talent, and a host of other things that I can't even think of right now. There's a list, actually it's on my website, of soft skills that managers and employers are looking for in employees now, as opposed to what they looked for before. Because we can train you, but if you don't have the soft skills, it's probably not going to be an easy switch for you. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, Morgan, it's been delightful talking to you.
Same to you. I appreciate you having me. It's a good conversation.
Absolutely. I knew it would be. There was no doubt in my mind. And thank you for sharing all the wonderful information of how you can help doctors and nursing students get to where they want to be as an adjunct to their regular formal education programs.
Absolutely. We're there to support and empower, and we would love to be of help to anybody in that journey.
Well, hopefully the people that are listening to this that are interested in nursing will take it to heart and remember that your program is there to help them, because it is difficult. It's very difficult.
It is.
But we need nurses. We need
very
nurses.
much so.
And it's a great profession. And from all my years of recruiting nurses, I have a lot of respect for nurses. And they're very versatile because they're so well educated and so versatile that they can fit in lots of different areas in the hospital as inside of the hospital.
It's true. It's a very, very adaptable profession. Yeah.
It really is. And it suits the lifestyle of someone that wants to be a mom, because you can choose whether you want to work in the daytime, whether you want to work at nighttime, whether you want to work 40 hours, if you want to do 3 12-hour shifts, 4 10-hour shifts. I mean, there's all kinds of choices. So it can really work with your lifestyle if you want to be a mom,
it can
and have a family. All of you listeners out there, keep all that stuff in mind, because all that information in mind, because it could work for you. And it's a profession that will be in demand throughout this switch to AI. We will always need nurses. I don't ever see a robot at the bedside taking vitals and doing whatever. So consider it. It's a really good profession and it'll serve you well. Morgan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cindy.
It's been a great conversation. I'll let you get on to the rest of your day.
All righty. Well, I enjoyed it, and have a great rest of your day.
You too. Did you enjoy the show? Well, keep listening, and don't forget to like us. If you've been laid off or downsized or need a career pivot, if you need resume help or to sharpen your interview skills, I can help you. Set up a complimentary 20-minute call with me on my website at www.insidescareerclub.com. Until next time, may God bless you, keep you, and make his face to shine upon you. Take care.